Hello and good evening. Welcome to This Week in Turkey. The fifth three-party summit of Iran, Russia and Turkey, focusing on Syria, was held in Ankara last Monday. The three countries announced that they were in sync regarding Idlib and called on the US to withdraw troops.
Finally been reached on the composition of a committee tasked with rewriting Syria's constitution as part of a political solution to the country's civil war, which is now in its 9th year. However, disagreements appear to persist over a couple of issues. President Erdogan downplayed the threat of the ISIS in Syria, while Putin said, "Of course, we are worried by the situation in northeastern Syria, where ISIS sleeper cells are emerging." Erdogan repeated Turkish demands from the United States for a so-called safe zone in the northeastern Syria along the Turkish border east of the Euphrates River, where joint patrols have begun, but also threatened Turkey would go it alone if its establishment was delayed. While acknowledging Turkey's security needs, both Rouhani and Putin took aim at US military involvement in Syria, saying its presence there was illegal and undermined Syria's territorial integrity.
Now I'm joined by İlhan Uzgel, Professor of International Relations, to discuss the summit. Mr. Uzgel, thanks for joining me.
I thank you.
So first of all, what is your general take on this summit?
Well, first of all, I should tell you that I'm not very happy with the way this kind of conferences organized. I have a problem with that personally. The problem is that this is a conference on Syria without Syrians. I mean, we have other types of conferences like the Geneva process, etc., or the Turkey's, meeting with Germany, France, and Russia together. So, any conference on Syria, and from a normative, ethical, and political point of view, should include representatives from Syria. First of all, I should stress that point. As for your question, well, this kind of conferences, they in their final communiques, they try to find a compromise among the participants. I mean, it tries to find a balance between the interest of Turkey, Iran, Russia, and of course Syria itself. There are serious problems concerning Turkey's deep involvement, deep military and strategic involvement in Syria, which we haven't seen so far in Turkish foreign and security history since the founding of the republic, actually. So far, Turkey has not been involved or meddled in the affairs of a neighbor with an aim to topple or overthrow the regime in a neighboring country. So this policy led to the resort of military means which dragged Turkey deeply in the Syrian land. So Turkey is trying to find a way to achieve some of its strategic aims through finding ways to cooperate with Russia and Iran on the one hand, and with the United States on the other hand. That is a very difficult position to sustain in the short and medium period.
Mm-hmm. Another issue that is important is that Turkey and the United States had agreed on creating a security zone in the east of Euphrates. So what impact do you think this summit will have on that very agreement?
Well, in that part of the summit, and Turkey joins, or Russia and Iran joins Turkey's position because it directly affects the integrity of Syria, which has serious and almost direct consequences for Iran's position in Syria. the existence of U.S. Military presence in military troops in northern part of Syria is considered as a threat by Iran, definitely. And one of the aims of this military involvement in northern part of Syria is to decrease the role and influence of Iran in Syria itself. So in this part of the issue, Turkey, of course, tries to side with Iran and Russia and Syria regime, the Assad regime actually. But this is a very difficult issue for Turkey in terms of achieving its strategic aims, that is the elimination of the PYD structure that is being constructed in the eastern part of the Euphrates River. The problem is that it is supported by the United States. And not only Turkey, but even Russia, Iran, and the Syrian regime cannot take decisive steps to force the U.S. out of Syrian territory, which they have there, that they installed their troops illegally, of course. Mm-hmm. So the problem is not only about Turkey. I mean, Turkey alone cannot convince the United States to end its presence there and to stop supporting the PYD. But not only Turkey, neither the combination of Turkey, Iran, Russia, and Syria are weak enough to defy the U.S. presence in northern Syria. And for a while I'm arguing that Russia and the United States had some time ago made a deal concerning the fate of Syria, which is basically that United States did not force the overthrow of the Assad regime with the condition that the northern part of the country would have some kind of an autonomy whose detail will be determined during the negotiations. So that was a kind of a deal which was reached sometime in 2030. Probably they are still continuing that deal. That's why Russia is not insisting on the elimination of the U.S. presence military presence in northern Syria.
Mm-hmm. And we know that the three leaders who have joined the summit had demanded the United States to withdraw their troops from Syria. So how do you think this will affect the relations between Turkey and the U.S., considering the fact that Trump and President Erdogan will probably meet next week in New York?
Yeah, Turkey will ask again the United States. I mean, what worries Turkey is not the presence of U.S. troops in northern Syria. The meaning of the U.S. military presence is to protect the PYD or Kurdish zone in eastern part of Euphrates River. So it's not only about the U.S. troops, and Turkey may demand the withdrawal of the U.S. troops with a clear aim that Turkey wants to make an incursion into this area, a military intervention into this area. But that's not possible, I should tell you. Of course, the final communique, calls for a withdrawal of American troops, but they know that it will not be succeeded through, calls or demands. I mean, basically, the U.S. shouldn't be there, with their troops, with its troops. Its mere existence, military existence in this country is against the basic rules of international law. I mean, if a country wants you to withdraw your troops, so you have to leave this area. That's for sure. So if you're not, that means that you're an occupier there, and this is the case. And Turkey cannot change this situation alone. Neither Russia and Iran.
So, Mr. Uzgel, thank you very much for your comments.
I thank you. Bye.
So we are continuing with our next video, news video. The hearing of imprisoned former HDP co-chair Selahattin Demirtas at the Grand Chamber of the European Court of Human Rights has been held. The judges are expected to announce their judgment at a later date, probably sometime in 2020. Hocam çok teşekkürler.
The hearing was held in Strasbourg in France and followed by his wife Başak Demirtas and HDP co-chair Sezai Temelli. Consisting of 17 judges, the Grand Chamber heard the defenses made by the attorneys of both Demirtas and the government of Turkey. The court will also take the statements of intervening institutions such as the European Commission of Human Rights as third parties. The court had in November 2018 called on Turkey to release Demirtas, but the local courts did not release him. The government requested that the European Courts of Human Rights review its ruling of rights violations again. That being the case of Demirtas has been taken to the Grand Chamber, which functions like an appeals court.
Rektör, vali, kaymakam. Neredesiniz kardeşim?
Turkey's Banking Regulation and Supervision Agency has asked local lenders to set aside provisions for a total 46 billion Turkish liras worth of loans by the end of this year.
Turkey's Banking Regulation and Supervision Agency, BDDK, has asked local lenders to set aside provisions for a total of 46 billion Turkish liras worth of loans by the end of the year. According to the asset quality review process, it has been determined that the total amount of loans that should be classified as non-performing loans, mostly comprising of loans to construction and energy sectors, amounts to 46 billion, the BDDK said in a statement. The regulator noted that it sent to the related banks the official instructions regarding the loan reclassifications and maintaining additional level of provisions for expected credit losses. The impact analysis conducted on the July 2019 financial statements of the banks reveals that the capital adequacy ratio of the banking system decreases by 50 basis points from 18.2% to 17.7%, and the level of NPL increases from 4.6% to 6.3%, according to the BDDK. The globally accepted minimum capital adequacy ratio set by the Basel Committee of Banking Supervision is 8%. The BDDK, however, has been implementing a target capital adequacy ratio of 12%.
ISIS leader al-Baghdadi released a video after a long while and addressed his followers once again. So now I'm joined in the studio by Doğu Eroğlu, a journalist who specializes on ISIS.
Hello, evening.
Hello, Doğu. Thank you for joining me. So my first question, is this address really important and why, if yes?
It is in several areas, but I shall address first the Baghdadi's last resurfaced, last address in a rare footage in April 2019. So we didn't have any footage of ISIS leader al-Baghdadi since his appearance on Al-Noor Mosque in Mosul during the speech in which he proclaimed himself as the caliphate of the Islamic State, and this was in 2014. And since then, the anti-Islamic State coalition was seeking al-Baghdadi and trying to find out his whereabouts and trying to bomb his headquarters very heavily. But against all odds, al-Baghdadi managed to survive, and his appearance in April 2019 was very important for a lot of people, including the Islamic State organization, and it was a very risky move. So in that footage, in that video message, he was talking about a lot of stuff, but especially for the audiences, for the masses in Turkey, it was particularly important because apart from his messages, there was a brief moment during which al-Baghdadi was handed a dossier which was inscribed Vilayet Turkey. So this was a huge thing for Turkish organization. in our experience in Turkey, Islamic State cell structures were heavily voluntarily worked. So they were organized in a voluntary fashion. There was Salafi networks in Turkey already before the emergence of the Islamic State. Most of them go back to early 2000s. So those networks decided to work with Islamic State as the Islamic State came to power in Syria and in Iraq. So we didn't know about the existence of a hierarchy of a unit that worked under direct chain of command of the ISIS command in Iraq and Syria. So Turkish units, the cell networks, was voluntary, and we didn't know that they were commanded directly by the Islamic State itself. So this Vilayet Türkiye, was a sign that there was such a hierarchy now, as of April 2019. So that was a huge development for us, for who monitor the Islamic State activities in Turkey. So in this context, the current address of al-Baghdadi and what happened afterwards is, yes, slightly important for us. The message itself, the current speech, I mean, has several key aspects we have never witnessed before. The first and foremost is the Baghdadi's suggestion to his followers that they would be better off if they accept repentance from other Muslims, meaning there was a huge conflict among Salafist groups in Iraq and Syria during the Syrian civil war. So what I mean by that is, besides fighting to the regime, fighting to the coalition, or fighting to the Iraqi army, the Islamic State had to fight its way out with the HDS, Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, which was formerly known as Cephet Nusra, or
another jihadist organization.
Yeah, another non-state armed faction with jihadist characteristics. So Cephet Nusra was only one of them. So they fought a lot of organizations who had similar aims, similar goals, but Islamic State was the biggest one, and they had to fight a lot of Salafist organizations. But now al-Baghdadi says to his followers that they should accept repentance from those people who fought under different banners against Islamic State. So it's a very important step for the Islamic State recruitment. It has consequences on Turkey. It has consequences on every other nation who has Salafist and Islamic State networks. So we might be seeing a new phase in Islamic State recruitment, during which the recruiters might embrace a softer tone, a tone for a tone which welcomes repentance, and they would try to act as an umbrella organization within Salafist networks.
So, well, it's a big question, I know, but how do you think the others will respond to that call?
The others, you mean the other organizations? Yes. Other organizations are in a sense, the huge Al-Qaeda network, the historical Al-Qaeda network, is recently in a very tough spot, because in 2016 they were cornered in Aleppo, and then the whole process had been transferred to Idlib, and we're seeing the same picture all over again. In Idlib, yes. Right? In Idlib, masses are cornered. They have nowhere to go, and well, some may argue that it is a failure of the Al-Qaeda networks, not the HDS, not the Cephet Nusra, but the Al-Qaeda network as a whole. So I think what al-Baghdadi suggests is now Islamic State networks, the global networks, is a worthwhile candidate for taking over the historical Al-Qaeda networks. So they might be rebranding themselves as a softer organization with they wouldn't seek any revenge, I would say. At this point, it is clear that they are welcoming any other organization with jihadist characteristics so that they would grow again. Because this loss of territory in Iraq and Syria didn't only hurt them in that region, but also globally. Because once the Islamic State lost its characteristics of territorial hegemony, their recruitment potential diminished enormously. It happened in Turkey as well. Many communities who used to feel themselves closer to the Islamic State are now disenfranchised from the organization because they don't really see a potential of success in Islamic State at this point. So this is a very important step for them.
So lastly, I would like to ask, Turkey, has been a target of IS attacks more than once in the past. So do you think that will be the case once again, given that very new message of Baghdadi?
I think what you actually mean is the campaign, the social media campaign came afterwards, the message. Well, that was an interesting occasion because we didn't see such campaigns conducted by the Islamic State Command in Turkey for a while. After the Baghdadi message was published, al-Baghdadi's voice message was published, we saw an immediate release of around 40 pictures, 40 photos allegedly taken by the followers of the Baghdadi, followers of the Islamic State, and all those photos showcased that the Islamic State had a large base of followers in Turkey, and they were allegedly ready to take up arms at any given moment. So I should explain the photos. The photos of the followers, which were disseminated by the Islamic State organization itself, my guess, had some notes on them, and on the notes it was written Vilayet Türkiye, which goes back to the earlier footage of al-Baghdadi, the April footage of al-Baghdadi, because it was the first time that Vilayet Türkiye was officially used by the Islamic State. So Vilayet Türkiye was on the notes, and Bakiya was on the notes, which means Islamic State will linger on, will live, and also survive. Yeah. Other messages which was present on the notes were yakında, which means soon. So that means which suggests another round of struggle within Turkey would perhaps will begin soon. But here's my take on the subject. When I look at the communities who felt themselves within the same alignment of Islamic State during the organization's top time, which is from 2013 roughly to 2016 maximum, I see those communities are now feeling more distance to the organization for several reasons. The first I already mentioned. Now, there's no territorial grounds for Islamic State. They don't really see any perks of joining the organization because basically in Syria and Iraq, the organization is an insurgency. They don't control any territory. They don't have an army. They are hitting and running. They're running a battle of attrition now. So the conditions are very rough since 2016. And another reason for this, what I call a distance, is the changing security environment in Turkey. Before 2016, before Turkey actually began its military operation in Syria, there was most people claim Turkey turned a blind eye to Islamic State organizations, and I am among them. Because in 2014, in 2015, I was present at radicalization hotspots myself, and I was talking to former fighters, the people who were willing to join the ranks of ISIS, and I wasn't seeing any pressure from the security organizations back then. In 2015, even the Prime Minister had said that they were unable to apprehend any suicide bombers before they do the attack. So that was the actual case before 2016. After 2016, the security apparatus embarrassed a more preemptive approach in which, they decided to go against the Islamic State followers, even though they didn't do any violent acts. So this has changed dramatically. So this caused most of the Turkish society who were aligned with Islamic State feeling less trusting to the organization, and they opted out, thinking of their own lives in Turkey. So what I suggest is this whole dissemination of 40-something photos was a doing of Islamic State coordination. So, and I suggest there is this campaign doesn't really reflect of Islamic State's social base, current social base in Turkey. So I suggest the security is much better in apprehending those cell networks, and they are detecting violent attacks before they are being prepared. The attacks come into fruition. So I suggest most of the former networks are not working at this moment, and this message is kind of overstated in the social media. So I should underline there are still Islamic State followers in Turkey, but not as that much as of in 2000 compared to 2013 to 2016.
So Doğu Erol'u, thank you very much for your comments. Now, This Week in Turkey continues with the next news video. Some good news now from us. The Financial Times has listed Mediascope in its list of the Middle East Future 25. According to the paper, Mediascope is an innovative startup defying the region's economic and geographical challenges.
Ankara'dan merhaba.
The world's leading business paper, the Financial Times, has announced its list of the Future 25. The inaugural list, which includes Mediascope, seeks to identify innovative companies that are disrupting their sectors and thriving. Mediascope is the only media company from Turkey that made the list. Besides Mediascope, two other Turkish companies are in the list. These are Turkish telecom giant Turkcell's Hello Hope app and conservative clothing retailer Moda Nisa. The jury included FT's editors Andrew England and Mark Rembridge and names from Mishkon Dereya. Other companies included in the lists are from Bahrain, Egypt, Iran, Iraq, Israel, Jordan, Kuwait, Lebanon and Yemen. According to the FT, the listed companies have brought change to a region dominated by government-controlled businesses.
Tabii ki yani sokaktan geçen herhangi birini çevirip ne düşünüyorsun desem.
Turkish football suffered a terrible week in the European competitions. Beşiktaş, Trabzonspor and Başakşehirspor were defeated in their opening games of the UEFA Europa League. Galatasaray managed a draw in the Champions League.
Turkey's sole representative in the Champions League, Galatasaray, drew 0-0 in Group A against Belgium's Club Brugge. Missing a couple of good chances, Galatasaray had more of the ball but looked shaky in defense. Group A also boasts Real Madrid and Paris Saint-Germain. Madrid was thrashed 3-0 by their French opponents. But the actual horror stories happen in the Europa League. Trabzonspor, away to Spain's Getafe, had a good game but lost 1-0. Başakşehir suffered a heavy 4-0 defeat against AS Roma at the Olimpico. Beşiktaş, on the other hand, threw away a 2-1 lead away to Slovakia's Slovan Bratislava, losing 4-2 in the end. A terrible blunder by goalie Loris Karius gave the Slovaks the lead. Beşiktaş fought back with a penalty by Adem Laic and an own goal by Bozikov gave the Black Eagles the lead before halftime. Beşiktaş was packed back to 2-2 in the second half and conceded 2 goals after the 19th minute to effectively cap Turkish football's horrible night.
This is all from This Week in Turkey. See you next week.